Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to talk about my experience being a older gamer. I officially turned 30 this year, and I want to talk about my experience being a 30-year-old gamer. And before we get too deep into the video, I do want to make sure to remind you to make sure you like and subscribe so that you don't miss another episode like this. Now, I thought it would be fun to kind of take a look back at my history in gaming and what gaming means to me as an individual and how I've stuck with it for this long. I also want to talk about what some of the challenges are being an older gamer and what some of the daily responsibilities that I have, how it can affect this hobby of mine and this passion, but just honestly how it affects my time being able to play. So starting at my earliest gaming memories, I remember my very first game, and I was very blessed with it, but I remember my very first game being Pokemon Red when it first came out, at least in the States. So Pokemon Red and having my own Game Boy Color, that was amazing. I think I was maybe 5 or 6-ish. I don't know. My timing with gaming history is a little bit off, but I remember being very young, honestly not being old enough to read all of the text in the game, but just being immersed in it, and I probably played and beat the game, putting in hundreds of hours, multiple times, multiple playthroughs, and just diving deep into that game like crazy. And so I just remember that game having a massive impact on me, to where when it was time for me to get another console, an actual home console, I got the Nintendo 64. And with the Nintendo 64, I got Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Snap, and other stuff like Star Fox 64, and that one Superman game that I honestly can't remember, but all that I remember was literally just Superman flying through a bunch of circles in the air. It was an interesting game to say the least. Then it was time to get a more hardcore gaming system, and so the PlayStation 1 was coming out, and so of course, thankfully, my parents got that for me, and so I got the PlayStation 1. And what's so funny about that is I got this console, and there were only two things that I had to be able to play for it my entire run of having a PlayStation 1, and that was the demo disc that it came with. So there was like maybe 5 to 10 games on there. I remember an Atlantis game and a Looney Tunes sheep herder game or something like that, where you're basically being the coyote and you're chasing after sheep and stuff. And so yeah, that was my main playtime with the PlayStation 1 during the time that I had it. But towards the latter half of my time with the PlayStation 1, I also got Metal Gear Solid, and this was my first sort of more intense, in-depth game. It was honestly probably a little bit more mature for me than my age warranted for me at the time, but I really loved it. It was a very difficult game, and I honestly couldn't get past about the first hour of the game, but I had a blast, and I really loved the first Metal Gear Solid. Then came the PlayStation 2, and with the PlayStation 2, I continued to play the older games that I got on the PlayStation 1, being that demo disc and Metal Gear Solid, because of that backwards compatibility, and I also played a ton, and when I say a ton, I mean a ton, of Sly Cooper. All of the Sly Cooper games, I absolutely loved those. Now, I should say during all of this time, I used to spend a lot of time going to like GameStop and getting one game for like a week or two, testing it out, seeing if I even liked it, and then trading it in and getting something else. And so I never really kept a whole backlog or just a specific catalog of games to be able to play and keep and come back to. I always just kind of kept rotating games out. But I remember at one specific point having all 4 Sly Cooper games at the same time, just stacked up right under my TV, and just jumping into Sly 1 because I really missed this one level, and then jumping into Sly 3 because I loved this new mechanic that was in there. And so I just loved being able to jump into each of the Sly games, and it was so much fun. And those games were something really special to me, something that had a very deep charm that you just don't really get in some games nowadays. And so it's something that really meant a lot to me, and that's one franchise or series of games that I would love to see either get a full extensive remake or at least a Sly 5 or something like that. And that was kind of it for the PlayStation 2. Then the next generation of consoles came out, and it was the Xbox 360 or the PlayStation 3. And so for me, At this point, this was the first time that I didn't automatically go with a new PlayStation console, and so I went with the Xbox 360, mainly because I wanted something different, but also, if I'm being honest, that PlayStation 3 at launch was like $200 more expensive than the Xbox, and it was a wild price tag for a new console, and so yeah, I didn't go with the PS3, at least at launch, so I went with the Xbox 360, and with that, I ended up getting Halo 3 and Medal of Honor. So I played the ever-living daylights out of Halo 3, and eventually when Left 4 Dead came out, I played a ton of that. I played it on all the different modes. I got Xbox Live Gold for the first time, so I was playing online with other people, and that was just such an amazing time in gaming history for me personally, because that was my first time playing something online and, you know, getting to experience, you know, a new level of games beyond just the story that the creators are trying to tell you. And then I played a lot of two other games, being Fallout 3 and also Rainbow Six Vegas. And I loved Rainbow Six Vegas because there was like one specific map and one specific game mode that everybody would do, and it was so fun, like just knowing that every time I get into a match for online, I'm always jumping into this one map that everyone's trying to be in, and for whatever reason, like nobody liked the other maps, and so whenever another map came on, most people would just like leave and then join so that they can get back into this one specific map. I think you might have been also able to create your own lobbies and choose the specific maps that you wanted to play, and so basically it all boils down to, we played this one specific map, which was, you started off on a rooftop and you're going down this casino, and there's different layers of the casino, and it's just, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Then at this point, I actually got a job. So, you know, over the years, obviously I'm growing up along with the consoles, and so I also got a job. It was my first job, and with my very first paycheck, I went ahead and got myself that PlayStation 3 that I missed out on launch. And so with the PlayStation 3, I played a ton of The Last of Us and Final Fantasy 13. So with Final Fantasy 13, that was my first foray into the Final Fantasy universe, and it was very visually stunning, to say the least, but the story was so confusing and the gameplay was so linear, and supposedly the gameplay opens up at the like last quarter of the game or something like that, but by that point, like, you're basically doing a hallway simulator for like 30 hours, and you know, at the end of the game is when you finally get to open up a little bit. And everybody that I've talked to that talks about this game always uses the phrase open up a little bit. So it's not even like an open world from what I understand. So it's like, I don't think I really missed out on much by not finishing this game and getting to that last you know, part of the game there. And so yeah, I enjoyed the bit that I played, and I enjoyed the experience of just getting into a new series of games, but honestly it was really disappointing for me, and it's something that I still to this day have not gone back to play. Then the next generation came out, and that was the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, and so between these two, I was really liking my experience with the Xbox 360, so I went ahead and got the Xbox One. And with that Xbox One, I played a ton of Dead Rising 3 and a lot of Halo as well. And then gaming for me kind of took a hiatus. So at that point, I was getting out of school. I was finishing up school. I was starting my first real job in the real world. And so I just didn't really have a whole lot of time. At least it seemed like I didn't have a whole lot of time to get into it. But if I'm being honest, I was just kind of losing my interest in gaming, at least at that time. My eyes were opening up to different ways that the world works, and just getting into different things going on with the world, and just getting into better social relationships with my friends, and getting into, you know, just other stuff, to where I just didn't really have an interest and a whole lot of free time to be able to game, at least as much as I wanted to. Gaming at that point meant that I was playing the occasional UFC match with my closest best friend, and you know, doing a couple of other, you know, odd games here and there. But for the most part, if you asked me if I played video games, at least at that time, I would have said no. And so fast forward a couple of years later, I am now married, and there's this little thing called COVID-19 that was coming around in 2020, and lockdowns were starting and everything was going on there. And so I realized that I was going to be spending a lot more time at home than I was previously. And so I figured now might be a good time to actually get back into something like gaming, where I can enjoy my time at home and, not really have to get out to experience things. I can just have a good time at home doing something here. And so I was lucky enough to actually get the very last PlayStation 4 before it got sold out, because everybody else was basically doing the same thing. So I got the very last brand new PlayStation 4 at my local BJ's, and I went ahead and ordered online, picked it up, and this was before like the heavy lockdown started. And so at that point I was just a happy camper. I was playing Fortnite because apparently the PlayStation console that I got had a bundle with like a lot of V-Bucks and stuff like that. So I was playing a lot of Fortnite and playing some more of The Last of Us. I got the remastered version, so I was playing a lot of that. And then I got heavy into the PlayStation 4 and got a ton of games, all of which that in some capacity I have played in some way, whether it is a demo on the PlayStation Store or I've downloaded a copy of it. And so basically, and I don't know if you can really see, but behind me I have all of my PlayStation 4 games up there, which is a fair amount, at least for my case. I was never really too big of a collector of physical games back when I was a kid growing up, because again, I used to spend a lot of time trading games in and out. And so yeah, I grew a collection of the PlayStation 4, and I am very happy because most of the games in my collection I have played in some way, shape, or form. So I might have a sealed copy of it, but maybe I've played the digital version or whatever's the case. And so I am just really proud that I have a collection of a lot of different PlayStation games that I really, really enjoy. And so then the next and current generation of consoles came out. Now I pretty much just went ahead and got all three of the big major systems. So I didn't just stick with the PlayStation or the Xbox. I've been fortunate enough to be able to get a PlayStation 5, an Xbox Series S, and a Nintendo Switch. And actually two Nintendo Switches. We have the original Switch with the detachable Joy-Cons, and I also have a Switch Lite that I mainly game on, is the Switch Lite. So that brings us to today, where the challenges of being a 30-year-old gamer come into play. So being an older gamer, I have a lot more responsibility. I mean, I have a career, I have things that I have to do all throughout my Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I'm also married and I have kids, and so that obviously takes up time, and so I can't just sit around and play for hours like I used to. I mean, I used to spend a lot of my day jumping between games and anime, and that was basically what high school was for me. When I wasn't in school or doing homework, that was pretty much all I was doing. And so yeah, as an adult, I don't have that kind of luxury anymore. But what I will say is really exciting is being able to experience games with my kids and with my wife as well. And so with our kids, we have been able to introduce them to the world of Mario, and introduce them to the world of Zelda, and introduce them to Pokemon, and introduce them to so much that is just, to me, is amazing. Because while we're certainly not trying to force them to be hardcore gamers by any means, if they don't want to play a game, they certainly don't have to. And we're not just casually sitting around on the couch playing games all the time. There's only limited amounts of time where we do that, because we do try to limit screen time and things like that. And so they have the opportunity to decide if they want to play games, then they can ask and we can play for a little bit. Or if they decide they want to be outside, whatever, that's totally fine. So we're not trying to push that life on them, but it's really great being able to share something like that, because of the times that they want to play games and the times that they are interested in certain characters. Maybe they're going through a Pokemon phase where they're just playing Let's Go Pikachu like we're doing right now, or Pokemon Scarlet, Pokemon Sword, or we're in, the Mario phase where Super Mario Brothers Wonder came out, and we played a good amount of that when it first came out. And so whenever we're going through these phases, it's great being able to just share this time with them and be able to experience gaming through the eyes of a child, and reimagine, at least for myself, what it was like, the awe and the wonder of the first time I played Super Mario World, for example, on the Super Nintendo, and how just amazing that game was for me, maybe Super Mario Brothers Wonder is going to be that kind of experience for them when they look back on gaming as an adult. And so, yeah, that's kind of my experience as a 30-year-old gamer. My time being able to play is both dramatically limited and also dramatically different, in the sense of I just can't sit around playing games all the time. I can play for sporadic moments throughout the day with the kids and at night when they're sleeping. But it also looks completely different because I'm playing completely different games. I mean, when I was going through middle school and high school, I stayed far away from any kind of Pokemon and any kind of Zelda games, Mario games, anything really that had to do with Nintendo. And you can kind of get a sense of that when I went back through my gaming history, when I didn't even mention Nintendo hardly even once, apart from like the first 2 consoles that I ever got. And so, yeah, that was just kind of my experience growing up as a kid. But now, as an adult and being able to share this experience with our kids and being able to play obviously more kid-friendly games with them, I am finding a deep love for things like Zelda, which before honestly is the first video on this channel where I talked about how Breath of the Wild is my first Zelda game, and that is a game to this day that I am still just deeply in love with and having a ton of fun. So that's been my experience as a 30-year-old gamer. And will I be stopping anytime soon? Absolutely not. Will things continue to change and evolve as time goes on? Absolutely. But I'm all here for it, because if my timeline hasn't evolved to what it is to today, with being able to play more kid-friendly games with my kids and experience things like that, I wouldn't be playing Breath of the Wild, which is probably one of my top favorite games of all time. And so I am so thankful for things evolving and expanding as time goes on. And so, yeah, I'm along for the ride. So I hope you are too. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another gaming review or any other gaming thoughts. And I'll catch you in either one of these 2 videos flashing on the screen. And I'll see you then. Peace.